Hey everyone, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at It's Jacinho. This is another extra episode. Yesterday we had Clive, today we have Elliot, and we're going to be talking all about Arteta, just analyzing his time at Arsenal so far, and yeah, just having a nice light conversation about everything. So should be a good time, and we're live, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, everyone. As I said before, Elliot is on the show today. And yeah, so not quite Clive. We're not going to get that nice, smooth, relaxing, what do you guys call it? Like a docile tone? What do you guys call it? Baritone from Clive. We're going to get whatever
hysteria.
Elliot brings.
full on hysteria. What I lack in baritone, I can make up for in hysterical hot takes.
I love it. How are you, Elliot?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I visited my parents in Florida for a week with my two daughters, my wife, and it was a blast. It's wild how something that I would have felt was a mundane trip just recently as 2 years ago, just going down to Florida to see my parents, felt like an otherworldly experience in the context of the pandemic. So my wife's vaccinated, my parents are vaccinated. I am not yet, but threw caution to the wind with my own health, which is my right. And it was just great to see them. So all in all, I'm feeling great. You can tell a lot of sunscreen was used on the trip based on the ashy complexion of the man you see in front of you. The full whiteness maintained, not a drip of suntan on me.
Can you adjust your ring light to make it a little bit?
I probably should. To be fair, I don't totally know how to use the ring light, but what I know is that if it's excessively bright, it smooths out a lot of the things that I don't want you to see. So I'm just going to stick with this setting and hope for the best.
All right. Well, we'll just see how it goes. Did you
you're still catching some of the smile lines. It's still there.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to see? Well, I know you saw the news about Aguero. I want to get, before we get into the Arsenal stuff or Arteta stuff, let's talk a little bit about Aguero. And if you've also heard that Granit Xhaka might be leaving the club in the summer to go to Hertha Berlin.
So I think we've maybe underestimated the club, right? Which is, we do have an aging society. Baby boomers make up a huge percentage of society here in America. And as society ages, there's going to be an explosive growth in the senior living industry, in the industries that service an aging community. And maybe Arsenal wants to try to replace some of the pandemic revenue, the match day revenue, with senior living facility type operations, trying to service a more senior and aging population. So if we can acquire all of the aging players into their dotage, maybe we can somehow pivot then to a model of more of that sort of senior living kind of facility oriented business model. So I think there's something there. Maybe we haven't fully fleshed it out yet, but I think that there's something there. And as far as Xhaka leaving, if you want to dive into that, like, I haven't read the rumors, but I think he has done probably a little better this season than I would have expected. When he's been with Partey, I think he's looked good. I still think his limitations are limitations that hold us back generally, and I think it would be best for all parties if we moved on. In general, I just think we've been very slow to move on the players that aren't quite at the level we need, even if they're fine. And moving him on this summer, I think, would reflect a good move towards a more progressive attempt to refresh the squad and bring in as many 32-year-old strikers as possible.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I was kind of shocked to see that. I guess maybe I had underestimated maybe the thought process of Arteta and the club. I thought maybe because he loved Bellerin and he loved Xhaka and he convinced them to stay. I think he convinced both of them to stay, that there would be some sort of ruthlessness there, even though he has an allegiance to them, in terms of who he's choosing now. He maybe has no, he will get rid of them in the summer if he has to get, so he can get what he really wants. So that would be shocking for me. I don't know if I just didn't think Arteta had that type of ruthlessness. Maybe it's not his decision, but that would be really interesting to see this summer. I wouldn't be upset if we got rid of him, to be honest. I think he's played well, but I mean, hey, he's going to be like 29 soon as well. So we don't need another aging player.
He's 2 years too young to re-sign is really the issue.
Right. Years. Okay. Yeah. You're going with this old man thing.
I'm
It's
just
so
going to
funny.
stick with it.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about Arteta. I wanted to know what your expectations of Arteta when he came in. Clive had said yesterday that you guys were pretty positive about him coming in even before Emery. So what were your expectations of bringing in a young coach with no experience?
So yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I wanted Arteta to be the guy before Emery. When he was really in the running, I was excited by it, and I think the sense I had coming out of the Wenger era was it's going to be hard to replace him. Instead of going with the sort of experienced manager with a nice, decent CV to come in and just kind of pilot the ship on the same course, let's roll the dice on a higher ceiling. Let's try to pivot to a more dynamic, youthful coaching ethos, a tactical approach that reflects some of the modernization of the game. Not that Arsene Wenger wasn't capable of doing those things, but I think we had sort of started to drift tactically. And my feeling was that what Arteta would do is bring in some of the principles that Pep Guardiola had at City. Not that he would be a Pep clone per se, but that we would get some of that influence bleeding over. And I think it is probably a little reductive to think that just because someone was an assistant to one of the great coaches in the game, that you're just going to get that kind of coaching quality. But I thought certainly philosophically, we would get some of the same principles and approaches. So I was very high on him. And the way I felt about it essentially is this. I thought that where Arsenal were at that moment, we needed a coach that could elevate the players to be more than the sum of their parts. I think in general, we probably overstate what coaches accomplish. Most coaches, I think the vast majority of coaches, get their team to perform roughly within a point or two of what the squad is really capable of achieving. I think the really bad coaches obviously fail miserably and the squad vastly underperforms. And the really exceptional, rare coaches can take a squad and create a tactical framework that vastly outperforms what the talent in the squad is worth. But those are the outliers. And so with Arteta, I felt that what we would get is the possibility of raising the ceiling, a tactical approach that might take the squad and provide that kind of boost to get it beyond where it was. Because you look at the squad and you say, where it was when he took over, you'd be lucky to be a top four. It's right on the brink of being top four, and maybe he could elevate it. Obviously, we can get into what's happened subsequently, but that was sort of my logic. I didn't just want a guy who would pilot the ship to about par. I thought we needed someone that could raise the ceiling.
So, I mean, from pretty much what you're saying is that you expected him to come and get the current squad to perform better. Obviously, when Emery came in his first season, he got 5th place, which is pretty much what you're saying, on the brink of Champions League football, and then kind of fell by the wayside halfway through his next season. Arteta comes in and we really don't move that much. What do you think has been, the reasonings for maybe Arteta not being able to, improve our league position to probably what you think the squad is capable of? Has he made mistakes that you can think of, just off the top of your head, that you could say this is Arteta's mistake?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, look, the thing we can say about Emery, ironically, is Emery probably did what I was talking about that most managers do, which is he piloted us roughly to what the squad was capable of, right? Brink of 4th place, Europa League final, but not good enough to win it. It's in that next season where things started to collapse, but the problem with Emery was the football was dire. So he was getting par with bad football. I think if Emery had gotten us roughly par, but with exciting, dynamic football that also leaked a lot of goals, we might have had more patience for him. But it was the really incoherent football that I think sank that ship, in addition to some disappointing results. With Arteta, I think the thing that surprised me was how conservative he was in his approach initially. And, in my worldview, look, I'll admit, I'm not a fan of defensive football. That doesn't mean it's not a type of football that has value. It doesn't appeal to me particularly. And I think at big clubs, if you just look at the way variance works and all the underlying metrics and the way you need to accumulate points in a league environment, you have to score a bunch of goals. Because if you try to win every game 1-0, you're going to get the odd draw that maybe you're hard done by. You're going to drop points in silly ways. And I just felt that Arteta came out of the gate a lot more conservative than I expected. I see that he was trying to install this sort of defensive framework that he could build around. But I think that back three formation that he settled on after the pandemic layoff really became a limiter for us in terms of what we could achieve at the high end. It helped us win some big games. It helped us win an FA Cup. But I think it always had us playing a little like the smaller club, right? A little bit more counterattacking, a little less able to sustain pressure and possession and create chances. And we all know by now that, into this season, we were averaging 7.5 shots a game. It just didn't create enough chances. It created very high quality chances. But in general, I just don't think it was able to ever get us front-footed enough to really impose ourselves on games. So I think his need to sort of shore up the defensive side of our game is understandable. If I want to call it a mistake, I think the mistake may have been overemphasizing that. He may have also just had the expectation of his players being prepared for a complexity that they didn't seem ready for. And what I mean by that, Jess, is that back three was actually a very complex system, right? There were fullbacks playing center back, but then having to be fullbacks in the attacking phase. There were midfielders who had to drop into the line of defense, but then go and be part of the front line. We would attack in like this 2-3-5 formation, but defend in a 3-4-3. It was all very jugo de position, and it had players playing largely out of position. Oba on the left, Tierney at left center back, right? A lot of those difficult, complex fits for players. So maybe he just overestimated the extent to which they could internalize what he was asking them to do. And since he switched to the 4-2-3-1, I'm not saying that it's a simplified system fully, but the players look a lot more comfortable and at home in the positions they're in. So if you're asking me what mistakes he made, maybe an overemphasis on building a defensive structure and maybe asking a bit too much of his players in terms of their ability to quickly learn the positioning he expected of them with no preseason, with no real training time to get them ready for it.
Yeah, I do agree with that. They do look a lot more comfortable in the 4-2-3-1. Maybe there was just a little bit too, like kind of what you say, clever by half, or, just trying to do a little bit too much, just keep it simple, because these players they're not the same caliber as the City players. A lot of them play basically whatever position they want on the field. They're still doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they pretty much just play all the positions. Like sometimes I see John Stones and I really think he's playing right midfield. Like it's insane the way that they play, but
yeah,
our players are really not multifaceted enough. It's like the only player that really looks good in any position is Saka. He's one of our only players that can do that. Everybody else is pretty simple, like not in a rude way, but they can pretty much only do one or two things. I think that's Xhaka as well. When you make his job more simple, he looks better, so maybe that's just kind of like how the team works.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you also kind of talk about value destruction. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure,
we're talking about Arteta and his man management, over, his tenure at Arsenal. We have players like Torreira and Guendouzi, that are young players, that look almost unsellable at this point, floundering around in their loan deals. We don't really know what direction they're going in. And it's like, we're not going to be able to sell them, but they also are not, I don't think they'll be welcomed back to Arsenal with open arms. Is that something that you look at Arteta, as something that he needs to improve upon? We have a lot of young players coming through. We want to make sure that we can sell them on and, nurture them.
Well, this is the thing that I think is really unfair for Arteta to some extent, which is, you look at some of these young managers that come up in, like in Germany, for example, right? And they come into clubs that often have really well-established, well-developed football structures beyond the coach. So if you look at the Sven Mislintat interview that he had done recently, he hired a very inexperienced, unknown coach. But that coach came into a club that had a clear philosophy about how they wanted to build their squad, a very strong hand on the tiller at the director of football position. And so the coach could focus on coaching the players he was given. Arteta came into the Raul era, which we know was a mess and awash with all kinds of grifting and questionable decision-making. And then he's thrust into the Edu era as Raul is gone, and then he's made manager. And when you're a first-time coach with no preseason and a pandemic going on, you're already in the deep end. You have one of the biggest coaching jobs in football as your first job. But now you also have to work in a club that doesn't really have a clear philosophy about how they want to build their squad and build for the future. I don't know any young coach that could have thrived in that situation. And if you came from the future, hello, please tell me the pandemic's over, and you come from the future and you say, actually, Arteta winds up failing, I would be much more inclined to think he fails not because of a failure as a coach, where I think he's proving himself quite adept, but a failure as a manager, where it's just a lot to have to learn. So what he did with Guendouzi and Ozil, in retrospect, I think you can actually maybe say, the right moves. Could we have done something a little differently with Guendouzi to protect the value there? I don't know. Easy for me to say without having the evidence of what was going on behind the scenes. I think in general, though, whether you look at the incomings, the outgoings, or the destruction of value that we had with players that are in our squad, asking Arteta to have to manage that was too much. And as a club, in order for us to get smarter, part of getting smarter, my feeling is having smarter people above the coach and not just thinking of the coach as the catch-all problem solver for the club. Arsene Wenger was that for 20 years. That is not how football works anymore. And I don't think we can expect Arteta to be that. And I'm not convinced yet that Edu has the experience and the know-how to do that either. I mean, we'll find out in time. So I'll be curious to see how that goes. But to be fair, Jess, I don't know why we would have expected Arteta to be able to handle that kind of situation, having never done so. And coming from a club in City, by the way, where if you want to take a Leroy Sané and just freeze him out and then have him leave, at a discount, you can, because you have all the money in the world. That's not exactly a good training environment for managing Arsenal's budget.
Yeah, for sure. It's really one of those situations where I feel like coming into it, it's understandable to see why he would have such a hard time making these decisions, because Arteta's been very vocal and, he's stuck to the culture aspect of wanting to have certain types of players with certain types of qualities in the side, regardless of talent level. He made a statement about El Neni having no ego. And I think that was kind of his way of saying, I don't care if he's not as good as the next player, Guendouzi, whoever. I'd rather have players without ego. So what you kind of saw was that maybe the talent level of the players that we kept, or the ceiling of the players that we kept, maybe weren't as good. But now we're kind of seeing the shift in the culture. I don't think it's as clear as Arteta probably thinks. He's behind the scenes. We can see whether the culture is changing or not. But it seems like from the outside, we can see something. In that we've probably lost some results. He made such a huge risk. That was a huge risk not to have Ozil in the squad. Now seeing how we are with a 10 and without one, we're 10th to 12th without one. We're 6th, in terms of form with one, so you can see that he took a really big risk, whether you like it or not, or you agree with it or not. He's hell bent on making this culture shift. And sometimes it'll be to the detriment of results, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I want to say this, Jess. I think as fans, there are things that we fixate on and overestimate their influence. Bottom line is, there is still no stronger predictor of success than wage bill, ultimately over time. I think squads overall mostly wind up accruing the points that their squad talent is worth. And I think all of this other stuff, culture stuff, leadership, captaincy, even coaching, is worth a few points. Now, the funny thing is, a few points changes league titles. Man City wins a title by 1 point over Liverpool, or Liverpool wins a title 1 point over them. We finish 1 point off fourth under Emery, and whole clubs shift around that. So I don't want to say it's meaningless, but I think what we have to realize is you're only ever tweaking at the margins other than the players at your club. You look at Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich. Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich accrued points at an alarming pace and still did not achieve as much as his predecessor, right? In terms of trophies and just raw success. And that's not to say that Pep wasn't the better coach. It's just the squad is the best predictor of success. So, I do think that Arteta's focus on culture is important, and I understand why he cares about that. I think his tactics now are working. I think the team is playing better football. But ultimately, if you don't build a good squad, you're not going to get very far. So, you can look at a club like Dortmund. You can look at some of the clubs you think of as having good football structures and how they're able to reload and rebuild and continually drive themselves forward. I think Leicester is showing an ability to do that. Liverpool have certainly done that to some extent. They do it even through coaching changes because they put the right squad together. So, Jess, I'm not going to say culture doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Or that captaincy doesn't matter and leadership. But at the margins, those things that we at fans expend a lot of energy discussing, I think wind up boiling down to a couple of points either way. They're probably not the seismic shift that we maybe like to think that they are when we discuss football.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. And when I look at the culture conversation, I want to know what culture we are trying to create at Arsenal. Yep. There's different types of cultures. Mm-hmm. There's winning culture, and then sometimes it's just hardworking, graft type of culture. And right now I feel like he's trying to get the hardworking, work for the team, do whatever you can for your teammates. I still think we need more of a winning culture to be built. That's something that hasn't really been addressed. You have certain games where we just fall short because I don't think we have a winning mentality. And that's ultimately why you lose good players. I was having a conversation with somebody just the other day about the Alexis, situation where he wanted to leave because the culture at Arsenal was not a winning culture. So even though Arteta is trying to build something where we see the hard work from the players, they're professionals, they show up on time and things like that. The winning culture is really what matters. So if we have hardworking players, but we're still, giving up 3 goals in 30 minutes against West Ham, it's kind of all for naught.
So here's my only pushback, right? Is that, look, nobody likes it when nobody likes any of my takes, but nobody likes my takes on culture doesn't exist and leadership doesn't exist. It's not they don't exist, but we retcon them to fit the results. The Invincibles had issues. Patrick Vieira tried to leave every summer. Was there not a winning culture at Arsenal? Was Patrick Vieira not a leader, not a captain? He tried to leave every summer. Okay? There was the Tuesday Club, right? When Arsenal were winning titles under George Graham and players were going out on the lash. There was rumors of cliques within the Invincibles where the French players hung out with the French players, the English players hung out with the English players, and they didn't mix. It's all kinds of rumors that we ignore when there's winning, but we focus on when there isn't. And that's not, again, I'm not saying that you can't create cultures of accountability, of work, of professionalism. You have to have that. Look at what Arsene Wenger did, right? He came into the club and he changed a lot of the culture in tangible ways, the way fitness regimes, right? Nutrition, things that wound up becoming par for the course in English football, but had never been before. And he professionalized the players in a way they hadn't been before. But, aside from some of those major shifts, I think discussions, I've seen Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah get in a fight on the pitch. Okay? Because Liverpool were winning. It was part of the winning culture. They all, they're so aggressive for scoring goals. If that team was sitting 7th, they would have said, look at how this team is falling apart. Right? So I don't know. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I do think, Jess, that it is an easy thing to build a narrative around based on whatever the outcome is. You know what I mean? Is it a sign of a good culture or a bad culture when players are fighting over a goal? It just depends if you're a winning team or not, right?
This is true. You guys in the chat box, let us know if you think culture is how important is culture in building a strong foundation for a side. If you think it's important or you don't think it is, let us know in the chat box, and make sure you let Elliot know how you feel, exactly how you feel.
I know how you feel. No one's ever shy telling me how they feel.
So let's talk a little bit about, some of the players that are out on loan. You've spoken quite a bit about Guendouzi. I know you're a fan of his passion merchant,
I've shifted on that a bit, Jess.
Okay. So tell me, would you like to see Guendouzi, Torreira come back? How do you feel about Saliba?
Yeah. Okay, fair question. So first of all, with Torreira, I just want to send out my condolences to him because I know he's going through a personal tragedy, and not that he gives a crap what I think, but he's part of the Arsenal family, and as part of our family, I wish him the best and send my condolences to him. But setting that aside, I think Guendouzi is a player who I still believe in the talent that is in that player, but sometimes you do have players that just for one reason or another aren't going to get there. I mean, Nikola Anelka, to hear Ian Wright talk about him, he was one of the most talented players to ever come to the club, but he had the nickname the Big Sulk, right? Like sometimes there's just players that mentality-wise, they can't get it right. And I think it's pretty clear with Guendouzi that something is going to have to really click for him as a young man if he's going to make his career into what it could be based on his talent. I don't know that it's right for Arsenal to gamble on that. It's a shame because anyone who has 5,000 Premier League minutes before they hit the age of 20 is an asset you should be getting tens of millions of pounds for. The only player I think that had as many minutes as a teen as he did over the last few years was Declan Rice. And while I don't think Declan Rice is some superstar, he's not going to be leaving West Ham for £5 million. So it's a shame, and we've blown it there. And that's, I say we've blown it there. He's blown it for us there, and it's unfortunate. But I don't think you want to bring that back unless something major changed. Torreira, I don't know that Torreira ever got a chance to play in a role that suited him, but I also don't know that I look at the way we're playing right now and see him as being the right partner for Thomas Partey. I mean, I certainly wanted to like Lucas Torreira, and I don't think it helped that he was given like the number 10 by Unai Emery at certain points of his career. But at this point, he just hasn't been around the club enough. It didn't seem like he settled with the club, and I think there's probably better ways we can spend our money and our wage bill and our resources in trying to find the right partner for Thomas Partey. So I wouldn't with Torreira. I think the more interesting question is which of the sort of crop of young players has a future at the club. Saliba is a talent. That would be one where I think we get the mismanagement award if we can't find a way to bring him back and integrate him. I believe in his talent, and I believe we spent enough on it that we should really try to develop it and make him a part of our club. So I hope that Saliba will come back and be a part of the team. I hope that whatever Arteta's concerns with him are, I hope they can be addressed and smoothed out. And, if he doesn't have a microphone shoved in his face every week and asked about Arsenal, and we can go a while where it's just kind of calm and quiet and there's no news, I hope he can come back. He's the one that I hope comes back and gets into the team and becomes a part of the team.
I agree. When I was talking to Clive yesterday, I was saying like Saliba's I think it's different than Guendouzi. He's really talented, and we're in a position where we need somebody in that position. We need it. And if you like David Luiz for what he does in terms of dribbling out of the back and contributing going forward, then Saliba's the perfect person to come in. You have players like Kanate or Jules. I think his name is like Jules. He plays for Sevilla.
I was going to say.
Yeah, those players are going to go for 45, 50, 60 million. And we've already, allocated resources to a player that's probably just below them in terms of development. So if we can give him the time to become the player that we think he's going to be, then I don't see why we wouldn't bring him in. Rob Holding is getting all this great and wonderful coaching and experience and stuff from David Luiz. If David Luiz is going to stay, wouldn't we want Saliba to get some of that as well? Because he's the one that's going to be playing in that position. So yeah, Jules Koundé, I see it in the comment section. Thanks you. That's
guys. The one. Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Mm-hmm. There you are. So yeah, I'd like to see him come back for sure. And I'd like to, maybe I can do like some sort of show soon with somebody who knows more about the academy, because I'm sure there's some players that we can pick out of there to fill some of these squad positions. So we're not giving El Nenis and Ceballos new contracts and things, because what do they add to the squad at this point to me,
No, and I mean, the issue, so I have sort of a unique view, as come as no surprise to anybody, about squad, which is that I think you prioritize your first 11. You try to get the most really elite level talent into your first 11 as possible, because that's what wins you things. And that if you have a lot of elite level talent in your first 11, you don't notice the weakness in your squad as much, because when a squad player has to come in, they're playing in a really strong group as long as you have other elite players around there. If you look at some of the failures we've had, like you look at the season we didn't win the title and Leicester did, we had one really elite midfielder in Santi Cazorla, but that was it. And when he went down, it looked like, oh, our squad is garbage. It's not the squad was garbage. It was that we didn't have enough elite talent around him. So you wind up with Francis Coquelin and Matthew Flamini as your midfield. Well, obviously that's not going to work, right? And I think, if that team had been Santi Cazorla and Thomas Partey, just for example, and Cazorla goes down, and then Coquelin has to play next to Partey, or Flamini has to play next to Partey, it's not a train wreck. You don't notice the drop in quality as much because you still have something elite in the team. So I think at the end of the day, your squad players, unless they're super talented academy guys, Jess, and they're about to go supernova, your squad players are usually mediocre. That's why they're squad. They're 7 out of 10. They're 6 out of 10. And so for me, I would much rather focus on having elite options in the first 11 and then filling out the squad with academy guys or guys that are just sort of stuck at the club, because you're never going to bring a guy in off the bench, or rarely going to, your fourth central midfielder is not going to be a league-winning elite talent. And trying to build that is not a realistic goal. So strengthen your first 11 and fill out the squad with whatever's left, is my feeling.
I don't know about that, Elliot. I really don't.
Well, so how do you allocate resources? I mean, do you buy a really good fourth central midfielder? Is that? I think the problem then is who are you going to buy? What are you going to do? Who's going to come to your club? Are you going to put a guy on £80,000 a week to be the fourth choice midfielder at your club, knowing that ideally you don't have to use him? Meanwhile, you have a bad right back or a mediocre, center forward, or whatever the case may be. I would say if your first 11, let's say every single player in your first 11 is elite. Now, I'm not saying that's achievable on our budget, but let's just say that was the case as a hypothetical. And one of them goes down and you have to bring in a really mediocre squad option. You're going to be fine, because the strength of that squad is going to hide some of the flaws in that player you've had to bring in. But, at the point that you're playing a bunch of mediocre players all over the pitch, I think that's when you start to notice it.
Okay. I mean, there's obviously a really good example of that, to support what you're saying. And that's probably Liverpool, very strong first 11, pretty mediocre players off of the bench. Klopp pretty much ran their legs off. Now they probably need a little rebuild, but they got 3 or 4 really good years out of that.
Yeah, they got a Champions League and a Premier League. You'd take it, wouldn't you?
I'm going to do some research on that. I just feel like you need a little bit more than that, but maybe I could be wrong.
I know that, I think it was StatsBomb at one point put an article out a couple of years ago about teams that win the league and the number of starter minutes they get. And that usually you have to have something like 85% of your minutes go to first choice player. The team that wins the league, there was some number that showed basically that the team that wins the league is usually the one that relied on its squad the least. Now, I realize things are a little different in the pandemic era because there's so much fixture congestion and there's so little break that teams are breaking and squads have become more important. But in a normal season, the team that wins the league is usually the team that gets the most minutes out of its first 11. Yeah, at the point, let's put it this way. At the point that you're relying on your third choice center back and your fourth choice central midfielder and your third choice left wing, well, guess what? You're probably not achieving the goals you had hoped for to begin with. It's very rare that you're going to do that and win the league and win a Champions League,
Yeah, that's true too. So now that we're kind of talking about this, I just wanted to, I don't know, it's kind of like loosely connected to it, but you're saying a smaller squad with more quality versus quantity of just more, you'd rather have a higher ceiling, less people, better quality, those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Arteta has a tendency to want to keep players just in case that we may not need, like Eddie or Ainsley. These are 2 players that put together, last season, maybe in summer/January, we could have gotten 40 for both to combine?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So
I mean, Wolves, what was the Wolves offer? 15, 20 million for Ainsley
yeah,
Maitland-Niles? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
at the time I would have bit your hand off for it, even though
Yeah.
I know that Ainsley is a good squad player. It was kind of like, why not take advantage of this? I never thought his value was going to go up from that. I think Eddie's value is as peak as it's going to be when we're ready to sell him, because at this point he's not going to get that many minutes. Do you think that's something that Arteta needs to improve on, is letting these players go and not having just in case players that don't get minutes?
This is where having someone to whisper in your ear is so important, right, Jess? Because when you're there and you're coaching them and you're in it, like, he clearly loves Eddie Nketiah. He wouldn't let him go out on loan last January. He kept him in the club. He really rated him. He gave him minutes. He clearly likes the kid. When asked why he hasn't played as much recently, he says, it's my fault. I need to find him the minutes. Eddie Nketiah would have been better off moving on, right? He's not playing right now, and he probably isn't going to make it at Arsenal. Arteta likes him. He needed someone to whisper in his ear, hey, look, let us sell Eddie. It'll be better for him. He'll get more minutes. We'll use those resources, and we'll bring in something that's going to make you a winning team. Arsene Wenger had David Dean. You look around at these clubs that really work well, and the coach and the director of football have that kind of relationship. And I just think this is where Arteta could really use that help, because I can understand how you get close to the players, you see something in them, and you can't get away from the idea that player could do something for me. You need someone to nudge you in the direction of moving them on, nudge you to move Ainsley Maitland-Niles on to Wolves, nudge you to move Eddie Nketiah on to Leeds or wherever it was going to be. I just think, or he probably should have gone to Brighton, to be fair. And that is a hard thing for a coach to do. And I think we saw it with Arsene Wenger too, right? Arsene Wenger fell in love with certain players and wouldn't move them on, and we kept them too long. If there's someone whispering in your ear, helping you make the better decision so you're not so close to those players, I think that's really helpful, and it's really hard to do. And I think he's in that situation now with Willock and Nelson and Nketiah and Maitland-Niles, all in that sort of zone of the age where we have to be decisive, where they're worth something, we can get money for them, and we have to decide where their future lies. And you just hope that between Edu and Arteta, they can arrive at the right decision for the club, for the players, for our future success.
100%. There's about 76 of you guys watching right now. Make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's just keep on rolling.
Please.
So, I don't know, you use a specific word, like you always use like very interesting words, but you talk a lot about you've never seen a coach come back from the abyss before, about Arteta being so close, to falling off of the ledge, in December. So there's two things that I think are contributing to this, but I'm going to ask you if you agree with me. Do you think that the FA Cup has something to do with him being able to, have a little bit of credit in the bank, and the fact that there's no fans in the stands helped him creep away from that edge of maybe us having to go in a different direction in December?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. I think there's three factors here, Jess. I mean, one is the FA Cup. Like, Unai Emery didn't have anything he could really hang his hat on to save him. He didn't win the Europa League. He didn't finish top four. And he didn't win a trophy, period. And so when the football got bad and the results got worse, there was nothing on his CV at Arsenal to make him stay. And to be fair, he wasn't exactly a world-class communicator. It didn't look like the players were really buying in anymore. A few things that I think you can say for Arteta. It never really looked to me like the players weren't fighting for him. That is such a hard thing to analyze from the outside, and I realize it's very narrative-driven. But you certainly never heard the noises coming out. There were some leaks, but I didn't think there were a lot of really fully anti-Arteta leaks. He wins a cup in his first season in a really difficult situation with the pandemic, beating City and Chelsea on the way. That banks you a lot of goodwill, and rightfully so. But I do think, and look, I want to go on record here. I wanted Arteta out right before Boxing Day. I was wrong. I got it wrong. What he's doing now is good, and I am really excited to watch where he goes from here. But my feeling was, with 13 goals scored through 14 games, sitting near the relegation zone, I had never seen a coach get to that brink. And I do think if we lost to Chelsea on Boxing Day, it might have been the end. He was at that brink. I've never seen a coach at a big club turn that around and come back from that, really. And I think and certainly not to the point where the fans fully embraced them. I mean, even Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who I think was not there, not even close to there, but on a brink of his own, went on a good run, is still at United, and that fan base is still nowhere near unified in their agreement that he should be the coach there. So no, I think Arteta benefited, as much as I hate to say it, from the absentee ownership, from the fact that there isn't a strong hand at the wheel above Arteta, and that the club wasn't going to be decisive because they really didn't necessarily have the infrastructure to decide what to do. But I think in this case, you could argue it's the opposite, that they had strong leadership. They knew they had something good in Arteta and they stuck with it. Your mileage may vary. Ultimately, I think they've been proven right. I think what he's doing now is impressive, and I'm glad he stayed. But no, I had never seen a big club coach get that far down, that far down and stay, and certainly not turn it around and thrive. If you can think of any examples, I'd love to hear it. But I don't know that you'd find many big clubs that had a coach touching the relegation zone through 13 games who stuck around and turned it around.
So, and you feel like you were wrong in thinking that Arteta should have been sacked.
Yep, I was.
What do you say to the fans that are thinking we've made a mistake? You see a club like Chelsea fire Frank Lampard, a pretty similar situation where he's underachieving. He doesn't really know, it doesn't seem like he's going to get a tune out of these players. And then they bring in an experienced manager in Tuchel, and now they're seemingly turned it around. I don't think they're as turned around as they think they are, but they're close, they're closer to where they want to be. What do you say to fans that feel like that's the way to go and we've somehow made a mistake, even though there's obvious signs of improvement, but the results, numbers-wise, are not adding up?
Well, what I'd say is that they might be right. They might be right. I mean, at the end of the day, Arteta has never managed before. This is his first job. And we're all learning about him as we go, and he's learning as he goes. I think we went through those growing pains pretty massively, but I feel like we are just now starting to reap the dividends of hiring a first-time coach with some good ideas, because they're just starting to show. We're just starting to see a team now that I think since Boxing Day on all the underlying metrics we're roughly second or third in the league, which for this squad we have, I think is really good and really impressive. And you see the tune he's getting out of some of the players, and I think it's exciting. He's still got work to do. He's got to finish that out through the rest of this season, finish strongly, ideally, maybe even win us the Europa League, which would be incredible, and shortcut our process by getting us back into the Champions League. But Jess, I can't tell you that sacking him tomorrow and replacing him with a world-class experienced coach would be wrong. I just know that it's no guarantee. As I said earlier, I think most coaches, get you roughly par with the squad they have. They go about it in totally different ways, but for the most part, they're going to get you within 1 or 2 points down or 1 or 2 points up of where that squad can finish. It's the very rare example, the really bad ones where the players quit, that sink, and the really good ones that can elevate a squad far beyond their capabilities with really innovative tactical approaches and exciting ideas about football. I think Arteta could be in that latter group, and we could now just be starting to see it. It's a shame it's taken this long, but maybe that's what you get with a first-time coach. So I can't tell someone who thinks we'd be better off with some really experienced, really top-class manager. I can't tell them they're wrong. I only know that I think right now, I don't know that you're going to get much better out of the squad than what Arteta is getting out of them since Boxing Day. And I'm excited to continue on that journey where I certainly wasn't prior to Boxing Day.
You were so funny before. I swear, just listening to you talk about... I
can still be funny now.
10 goals in 12 games or whatever. So
it's not
funny.
Good. It wasn't good. I mean, it wasn't good. The shots were bad. The expected goals were bad. The goals were bad. The wins were bad. The losses were bad. I mean, it was all bad. I mean, that's the weird thing, Jess. That's what I'm saying. If you try to look at any of the things that might have indicated a turnaround was coming, the quality of the football, but we weren't getting results. Nope, the football sucked. The metrics, nope, those sucked. The way we were handling players, the Saliba thing and the Ozil thing, and no, that all looked bad too. It all looked bad. And Willian was playing over Pepe, and it just, none of it made any sense. And then almost like a light switch, Boxing Day, Martinelli starts, and we go to a 4-2-3-1, and Smith Rowe starts at the 10, and here's this football team I don't recognize, and that's what we did from then on. And it's been brilliant. So I think if he deserves criticism for what came before, by all means, he deserves credit for what he's done subsequently.
Yeah. I mean, I had the same feelings as you. I just articulate them the same. I did echo a lot of, my feelings really echoed a lot of yours, where before I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know what was happening. Like the type of football that we're playing just seems so struggle. Like everything was like a struggle, like no movement, hard to watch, letting in silly goals. And it was just a really strange time, those 7 to 8 games, and I think as a club, we really needed that Boxing Day game to come around.
Yeah.
I thought that was the end. I really did, and I was like, I too thought he probably should have been sacked. That's the reality. I mean, I was there too, but now I can kind of see what we're trying to do, and seeing players in between the lines, and we're playing fluid football. I mean, for a couple of games, like we've been scoring lots of goals. Like, I think people forget about that. Like, we're scoring 3 goals in certain games. I know we do stupid things at the back that we shouldn't be doing, but being able to score 3 goals, create so many chances, good chances, that if we were more clinical would make it better. I think that's progress in itself, but for you, what do you want to see moving forward? Like, what is the next step for Arteta to convince you even further that he might be the guy for the job?
So it's really two different things. I think as a coach, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, if you told me we'd have a coach that would get this squad performing at roughly the second or third best underlying metrics in the league, I'd say brilliant. That's above what I'd expect this squad to achieve. And since Boxing Day, that's what he's been doing. If he sticks with that, I think as he becomes more experienced, that will improve. What does he need to improve? I think he can get better at substitutions. I think it's weird, right? Because when there were the water breaks, he seemed to do such a good job teaching the players and making changes, tactical tweaks. But I don't know that he does the best job with the personnel tweaks. I still think he can do a better job of influencing the game with his substitutions. I think starting to, and look, we got where we are now by him prioritizing players that can execute his tactical philosophy. But I think now starting to maybe also prioritize talent. Get Pepe in there a little more. Does Willian have to, like, if fans were in the stands, would Willian have come on at halftime against United? Would Willian have been the choice against the Benfica game? Like, how big a moment is that? He picks Willian and it winds up working out, gets an assist, and we go through. But I think his selection sometimes, yeah, absolutely, like and subscribe, please. What are you doing if not? I think his selections can look to the future a little more, for lack of a better way of saying it. Between substitutions and selection, I mean, that's really it. I think the job he's doing right now as a coach is a great one. The question of what he can do to improve as a manager is a trickier one. Can we be a club that gets away from this pathological need to build for today instead of building for tomorrow? Can we think a little more long-term? Can we think about players as assets? Can we get the players in pre-prime, get the most out of them during their prime and sell them on for a profit? Can we do those things that the smart clubs are doing that allow them to create cycles of success that are renewable? Asking Arteta to learn that is a lot, and it's why I would love for him to have a partner as a director of football with a little more experience in the European market and building a modern club football team than Edu has. But who knows? Maybe Edu will learn fast on the job as well. And it remains to be seen. I think the summer will be an interesting indication of where we're planning to move in terms of our squad building philosophy. But yeah, I think substitutions, maybe little tweaks here and there, but for the most part, I'm pretty happy now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think,
I know it's off brand. I'm sorry.
I mean, I feel like seeing the type of recruitment that came in this past summer, even though I think we fell a little bit short, now seeing that you can't go, 5 months in a season without a 10, a creative player. It's just, it doesn't work, But now that we have them, I like where we're going. I like seeing a younger squad. I like that we have options. It seems like we know what we're doing going forward. That defensive solidity is there, except for the individual mistakes or the the slow starts or whatever you want to call it. It's really not because we can't defend. It's because we're just dumb, sometimes, that's what Clive was saying. He's like, we're
Clive
just
loves
stupid.
to call our players dumb. He just loves it. It's like his favorite thing.
I was like, that's exactly what it is. We just make dumb mistakes, but the defensive solidity is still there. And you can see that Arteta, the things that he's layered in over, his tenure are still there. Defensive solidity, structure, system, patterns of play, things like that. We just need to be more clinical and smarter, but we're seeing that there is a divide in the fan base. There always is. There's always, this is right, this is wrong. But ultimately, I can't get this out of my head where there is, a thought from some of the fans that if he doesn't win the Europa League, he should go, because I think that we're going to finish somewhere. We're going to finish outside of European competition in the league. That's what I think. I've thought that for a while now. So without Europa League, without winning it, we are in a position that I've never seen this club in before, which is not playing in a European competition, which to me is kind of scary. I know that some feel like, being outside may be okay, but financially, I don't know if we're in a position to be outside for a year, two, whatever. For you, does he have to win the Europa League to keep the job? Or, I feel like he's going to be here regardless, but what does it mean if he doesn't win the Europa League and we're outside for the first time?
It's not good. Look, I think it depends on a few things. If we continue to play at the level we've been playing post-Boxing Day, and we carry that through to the end of the season, and we can look from Boxing Day to the end of the season and look at those metrics and say we were one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league during that period, I think that is enough indication of a direction of travel, a positive direction of travel that I would stick with him. I think if we finish outside of the European places, regardless of that, the problem I see is a few things. A lot of people say, let's finish outside of the European places because then we can just focus on the league. Well, first of all, there's the European Conference or whatever the heck it's called that we could wind up in, or we don't want to wind up in. But even setting that aside, I think one of the things that the Europa League does, if you're a well-run club, is in the group stage, it gives you minutes for your young players. It gives you minutes for your squad players. You can afford to have a slightly bigger squad. You can keep your players at the club to build fitness and form and get a look at them and train as opposed to having to send them out on loan. If you really treat the Europa League group stage properly, you should be able to get 200 minutes or more into players that otherwise might not play. Maybe even 300 minutes, depending on how you play. In some cases, if they play all 6 games, you're talking about 520 minutes of playing time for a player that has no other place to play other than maybe League Cup and FA Cup. So I think what you lose if you don't have Europa League is a great place to learn about your young players at your club without sending them out. You lose the ability to build a bigger squad and have that squad ready for the call when they need to be played in the Premier League or in knockout competition later. If you don't have it, you have to loan out more of your players. You have to sell more of your players. You have to pare down the squad, and you focus on the league. With fans back in the ground, you're obviously going to have less revenue. You're going to have less TV revenue. It's not great, and you lose prestige as well. But I can't be process oriented when it's bad and then abandon that philosophy when it's good. So what I mean is, I wanted Arteta probably to go before Boxing Day, not just because of the results, but because of the process. All the underlying metrics said we were one of the worst teams in the league. And that, for me, was the problem. Now the underlying metrics say we're one of the best teams in the league. And if he can produce this football all season next season, it will pay dividends. So, no, I don't think we should be so results-based that if he doesn't win the Europa League, he goes. But I will not criticize a fan who says if we finish 9th and don't win a trophy, the manager should go. This is Arsenal. If you want to say that if we finish 9th and we don't win a trophy, the manager should go, it's very hard for me to say you're wrong, even if I can point to reasons I disagree. You know what I mean, Jess? Like, how am I going to say to a fan, an Arsenal fan, who says 9th and no trophy is no good, sack the manager? How do I say to that fan they're just dead wrong? Like, I get why you would think that. I just think that there are arguments to the other side.
Yeah, for sure. It's just one of those things where I think he's here. So I'm not really thinking about it that way. I want us to win the Europa League badly. now that I think
Yeah.
that we can win. You know,
it's
first
probably
was
United in the final, right? I mean, if that's what we'd be staring at, right?
I mean, hopefully it's Granada in the final.
I'd
I
take
mean,
it.
that would be better, you know, but
Fair enough.
I think we have the best chance to win it. I mean, I personally think we had a worse squad when Emery had it. That the team that he put out for the Europa League final was diabolical. Like, that is not a Europa League final team that should be going out there against Chelsea. But I think we're better now. And Manchester United hasn't really beat us since Arteta has been here. They haven't beat us in a while. You know, that's not to say that they can't turn up. You know, they have world-class quality players, but I think we could do it. I would like to see us win, but ultimately I don't think he's going anywhere, even if we finish 10th and don't win the Europa League. But I do think that the fire will be turned up a little bit more if we're not in some sort of, you know, fourth place, somewhere around there next season, you know, so we'll just have to see what happens. But you guys go ahead and get your questions in. We'll do a couple of minutes of questions for Elliot. Be nice to him. Treat my guest right. Don't be mean. But
doesn't matter.
I'm going to take host privileges and ask my question first.
Sure.
So do you care about the Liverpool game on Saturday? Do you think it's important for us to really go after them? You know, I was very disappointed in the way that we played them at Anfield at the beginning of the season. I thought that was the beginning of, wow, we really suck. We're not good enough. You know, a lot of fans were really positive, thinking that we could do something against them. And 3-1, I think it was. How important is this game for Arsenal, even though it really doesn't, we're not getting anywhere in the league?
So look, I got to admit, I struggle to believe that Liverpool are as bad as they are. I watch them. They look bad. I can't believe it. So I keep thinking that there's a vintage performance around the corner from them, and I worry it'll be against us. I mean, the thing we haven't seen from them is the intensity of pressing. When we played them, we couldn't get out of our defensive third. That was the problem. We couldn't get out. I mean, it's like playing them the last couple seasons, like nothing we've experienced. It was like peak Barcelona, where they'd have 70% possession. We could not get out. They do not have that anymore. I think the biggest difference now with Liverpool is their defense is a shambles. So while I hope we beat Liverpool, what I want more than anything is have a go. I understand why we couldn't really have a go earlier this season, but we should be having a go now. And if we aren't testing that really, really poor back line, if we aren't creating some chances and putting them under threat, then I'll be really disappointed. Would it surprise me if they turned up this weekend and just turned on that press again and suddenly there it was? It wouldn't surprise me. But I think we should be able to at least create the chances to make it a fun game for the dreaded neutral, and we should be able to get something out of it. I'm not prepared to give up on European places yet, but these games against Liverpool, Chelsea, Everton, these games have to be wins now. The West Ham draw, like so many of these unfortunate results lately, you know, Wolves, Villa, it's left us in a tough spot, obviously. So yeah, go out and have a go with them. Try to get at that back line. If we do, I think we'll have chances to win the game, and I think we need to win the game. So yeah, I care about it a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I'm more wanting to see the performances until the end of the season. It kind of is what it is. Like, I don't want to see us do the sit back in our box and get battered. The first 30 minutes of that West Ham game can't happen again. It just can't. That was so, I just couldn't believe how we were just kind of like pinned back by West Ham, you know, so.
Well, we couldn't complete a pass to a teammate. That doesn't help.
It was terrible. It was terrible. All right, here's a good question. From Yo-Yo. Thank you for your question, Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo asked, do you believe the changes to FFP and the European club competitions will be enough to deter the likes of FSG, the Glazers, from forming a European Super League?
No, I mean, I think that's the goal ultimately for them. You know, the TV revenues, they're going to stagnate. It's only a matter of time before we're seeing offers that are down from the previous one. I mean, I realize I think they just had a really good global auction. If I remember correctly, I might be misstating that, so apologies if I did. But yeah, I think the goal is still to create a product that can produce on a weekly basis the kind of viewership and TV revenues that the Champions League produces at the pointy end, right? So no, I think that's their goal. And, you know, again, this is the problem you have with foreign ownership. They don't have any real connection to the culture and the history of the Premier League, English, you know, the English league, as something that they value. What they value is being in the premier club competition. And, especially given what's happened during the pandemic, I think they feel the urgency for that all the more. Now, the only thing I would argue is, they have such a strong league forming in the Premier League, but I think ultimately what they want to be insulated from, Jess, is this model where you have to spend beyond your means to win and to stay relevant. Because, if you don't spend in the Premier League, you can just get relegated out of it, right? It's not a closed league. The thing they want is a closed European league where they can institute things like caps on spending and things like that, and where it looks like what they want is they want the NFL, right? Every owner's dream is to recreate the NFL, because the NFL is a cash machine for owners. That's what it is. Huge viewership, spending is capped, and ultimately the money goes in the owner's pockets. And the money doesn't go in the owner's pockets in the Premier League. The asset increases in value, but they have to spend a fortune to get there. So yeah, they want to create a league that they control that's a closed circuit where they can turn these into profitable organizations. That's the vision. I think that was the vision that they laid out with their sort of adjustment to the Premier League that they knew was a trial balloon that was going to get shot down. But no, I don't see them moving off their desire for a European Super League unless they can create profitability operating in the Premier League, and I don't see how they do. Are you muted? Because I can't hear you. Is that me? Or is that you?
I was super muted.
All right. Super muted. I didn't know that. Super mute. I need to get that feature for some of my guests.
Oh my gosh. So unprofessional, you guys. But here's another good question, because you can't get out of it. So Tony asked, other than Saliba, which player that's out on loan would you keep? You have to pick a minimum of one. No Saliba.
Other than Saliba, who would I keep that's out on loan?
Got Willock. You got Ainsley, you have Mavropanos,
He's been excellent. I just don't think we have a need at center back, and especially if Saliba comes back. That's a really tricky one. I know people have liked the performances Willock has been putting in. I don't rate him for Arsenal because I don't think his passing is good enough, and I still think he's not going to play the number 10 for us, and if he's playing in central midfield and he's not crashing the box and he's not, building the attack, I just think our central midfield needs to have too many touches, too much passing for his type of game. I just don't think it's a comfortable fit for him. I don't think Ainsley Maitland-Niles has a future at the club. Gosh, probably Torreira then. I think Torreira because I think if El Neni were to move on and Xhaka were to move on, I think Torreira is good enough to be just outside the first 11 rotational option guy who can come in and do a job type midfielder, to use every cliche imaginable. At a decent age, who could still be sold on for a profit in a year or two. So yeah, I'd probably go with Torreira because I trust him. Again, good enough to be a squad player at Arsenal, which I think is the basic level that we're talking about with all these players.
Yeah, I think it has to be Torreira. I would agree with that because I don't see it for Guendouzi. If Guendouzi didn't have the attitude that he has, which
it'd be easy.
To be honest, if he didn't have that attitude, he'd be playing for Arsenal. But if he didn't have the attitude that he has, it would definitely be him, hands down.
I think the thing with Guendouzi, I know not everybody even rates his talent, but Jess, I've always rated his talent.
I know.
I've now come around to the idea that he is a player who is just needs to grow up, as a professional if he's going to have a career. And I don't know that we want to be his daycare,
No, I mean, he's not, when we talk about like young talent, like there's a certain amount that you'll deal with if you know that they're going to be at a certain level and they're performing at that level. And I think he's still he has it and we can see it, but it's not developed enough to really take on that type of headache. He's good, but since I've watched him at Hertha Berlin, I think he's just okay. I think he's just the same, and so no, I wouldn't bring him back. But Arsen's disciple asks, 2 players in, prioritize. So I think that's a question, but yeah, if you had to bring 2 players in, I know you don't.
It's a question statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Statement question. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would say central midfield partner for Partey. So whoever that is, Basuma, pick the player. I'm not great at the who we should sign thing because I'm not knowledgeable on all the players outside of Arsenal. When we get linked with them, then I go look at them. But until then, I mostly ignore them. But he's definitely a player that looks like one that might be of interest. So yeah, my priority would be, well, this is tricky actually. The number one priority for me is Odegaard, to keep him. If we don't keep him, then it's got to be Aouar or Buendia. So I think the two priorities are Partey's partner and number 10. But if that doesn't count because we're just sort of somehow assuming we're keeping Odegaard, which would be amazing, then I think right back is becoming a priority, because I think as much as I love Hector Bellerin, and I am a huge Hector Bellerin fan, in fact, his name is on the back of this, I would sell him, best for everyone, but I don't think Cedric is good enough to be our first choice, and I don't think Maitland-Niles is either. I think we need a Tierney-level player on the other side. So I would prioritize right back and central midfield, but that's presuming that Odegaard stays, which is far from presumption, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. Who has been the biggest surprise for you positively this season for Arsenal, and who has been the most disappointing for you? Somebody that you thought was going to do really well that maybe has fallen a little short.
The biggest positive surprise for me has been Willian, no question. It's terrible. No. The biggest surprise has probably been Gabriel. Saka's been brilliant, but we saw he had it in him. Gabriel came in, and he was kind of behind Saliba in terms of the person that the player that people thought talent-wise were ready to step in and make an impact. I thought Saliba would come in and play a bit and impress, and that Gabriel would kind of be a rotational option. He's probably been our best center back this season, and he stepped right in and looked comfortable, looked dominant, scored an absolutely sensational and important goal for us in the Europa League that I think will stick in the memory. Yeah, he's been great. He's been great at a level that I never anticipated he would or could be great. And so while there are players like Smith Rowe and Saka who have been great, I think I kind of believed they had that in them, especially Saka. But I didn't know Gabriel could come in and be a first-choice center back for Arsenal and look really good doing it. So I don't think he even gets the credit he deserves enough. And I'm not saying he's been perfect, but if you think about this summer, Saliba was the guy we couldn't wait to see, and Gabriel was the guy that we were kind of curious to find out about. And, well, we know which one became the more relevant player. So, yeah, I'd have to go with Gabriel. As far as most disappointed, not Willian, because I didn't want him to begin with, although he would be an easy choice. I think Hector Bellerin would certainly be a candidate for me for biggest disappointment. So I might... This is tricky.
You better not say Thomas Partey.
No. I mean, other than the injury thing, he's been great when he's played. I mean, Aubameyang is a candidate, although I think some of that is less his fault than people give him credit for. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. I'm probably going to go with Ceballos, actually.
Wow.
So Hector Bellerin or Ceballos, but I'm going to say Ceballos just for this reason. People have short memories. It's easy to forget that he was in the conversation, and not just a fringe of it, dead center of the conversation, best player for Project Restart, our best player, and one of our best players in the cup run. And we all said keeping him this summer was a priority. I mean, that was not a fringe view. That was not a view that wasn't widely held. And I really believe that if that level was one he could maintain, or going into his 23, 24-year-old season, maybe even improve on a little bit, we could have a star on our hands. And instead what we've had is a guy who just fell back from that Project Restart level to something more like when his loan started, where he's a lot less even in his performances. I don't think he's been as terrible as some would make out, but he's had crucial errors that have cost us in Europe. He's been in and out of the team. He hasn't been able to make a position his when Granit Xhaka's position was certainly vulnerable in there for the taking. He wasn't able to take it. So, yeah, I mean, while Hector Bellerin has disappointed me, Willian did pretty much what I expected. Aubameyang, not what we hoped. I think Ceballos, on the basis of what I saw in Project Restart and what I thought would come from him, far underperformed. And maybe I'm picking that one just to be a little off-center, just because, I mean, Aubameyang feels like a pretty obvious one too. But no, I'm going to go with Ceballos, because why not? Embrace debate.
Yeah, that's true. Yo-Yo says it right here. Is like, so Ceballos is no longer reliable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. It's like, once you lose trust with Arteta, it takes a long time for you to get it back, or you may not ever get it back. He trusts certain players. We may not love them because I think Ceballos' ceiling is much higher than Xhaka's, but there's certain flaws in his game that make him hard to count on day in and day out, where he was so reliable during Project Restart. So I'm not sure if because our game plan changed and we don't have an additional center back there to maybe to make it easier for him, but he just hasn't been great this season. I do rate him very highly, but I wouldn't take him full, for a permanent, especially
certainly doesn't seem to fit
Odegaard.
the league, does he? I mean, he's a little slow. He needs the extra touch. He likes to come to the ball. I think in general it just hasn't worked out, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is the most important question that I'm going to give you. It's the final question as well. Which Chelsea player are we going to sign this summer?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and we really have to think it through carefully. Olivier Giroud fits because he's both a Chelsea player and he's super old, so that seems like a really obvious choice. We could go for Marcus Alonso because he's a Chelsea player, he's getting old, and we already hate him. So
Azpilicueta, right back.
Azpilicueta is another perfect shout. Yep, absolutely. Old Chelsea. I mean, I would take other Chelsea players. I mean, the funny thing is there are plenty of Chelsea players I'd take. I'd love to see Christian Pulisic play for Arsenal. Sorry, that'd be fun for me. I think Timo Werner would be a fine guy to go get. But yeah, I mean, obviously the one thing I would say is if they're ready to give up on Callum Hudson-Odoi or Tammy Abraham, you would have to think about it. Center forward is an interesting one. I think Lacazette should move on. I think Nketiah should move on. I'm not sure I think Balogun's going to stay, and we don't even really know what we have in him. Someone's going to have to play center forward in addition to Aubameyang. Now, maybe it winds up being Martinelli and Pepe. I could see Pepe playing center forward. I think Martinelli is being prepped to be a center forward. But if we needed another one, I know there are a lot of people that don't rate Tammy Abraham, but he's put up numbers before that are exciting. I think he'd be a choice in Callum Hudson-Odoi if they're not taking good care of him. I think we could do a good job with him too. But yeah, ultimately, if we pass on the Chelsea players, I'd be just fine with that. Thanks very much.
I would too. If it's not Mason Mount knocking at the Emirates door, I'm good on it. Even though I love Mason Mount, but obviously
I know he's good. I just don't like him.
What?
I just don't like him.
What don't you like about him? Is it his hair? What is it?
I don't know. Just his attitude. It's very Chelsea to me.
Okay. We'll have to talk a little bit more later about what the Chelsea attitude is. I need a descriptor for that. But you guys, that's going to be it for the show today. You guys in the comment section have been amazing. There's 97 of you guys watching right now. And I would like to see 97 likes on the video. If you guys don't mind, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget about that. Elliot, you want to let everybody know how they can become a patron and what you guys have been going on? I'm a patron of the Arsenal Vision podcast, and I think it's amazing. They're putting out so much good content. So if you've loved listening to Elliot and Clive in these last two shows, Clive, then you'll love being a patron. But let them know, how they can become one. And
yeah, I mean, most important, just listen to the pod and see if you like it. And if you like it, then you can become a patron. But yeah, I mean, it's the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. You can check it out at arsenalvisionpodcast.com. You can go to the Patreon, patreon.com/Arsenal Vision podcast. I think that's it. It's in the bio. It's somewhere. We do live streams with Jess, which is a joy. We do pre-match live streams. We do post-match pods. Tomorrow we'll have a Patreon pod that is going to address a recent series of a questionnaire that was done by The Athletic, actually, that's really interesting. And we're going to dig into that and talk about sort of fan sentiment and where we are. So that'll be for Patreon tomorrow, and then we'll have our full pod previewing the Liverpool game on Friday. And we do instant reactions at the whistle every match day for patrons. So there'll be an instant reaction pod after the Liverpool game out about an hour after full time. So that's us. We also have a big announcement about a live event coming up down the road, and hopefully down the road enough that this whole pandemic nonsense will be in our rearview mirror, but going to hold on announcing that for just a bit. But that's something to look forward to because I'm very excited about it. Jess, always a pleasure to chat with you, and thanks for having me on.
Of course. You guys heard it from Elliot. You guys know where to follow him, find him, all that kind of stuff. You'll find him on Twitter at Yankee Gunner, doing his thing. Reactionary takes, just all the things that you love about Elliot. And you guys, for the show, it's going to be a little bit different for the match preview for the Liverpool game. I'm going to be pre-recording a show with Hardcore Football. It's two American fans. One is an Arsenal fan and one is a Liverpool fan. So we'll be pre-recording something tonight and putting it out tomorrow. Cool. So you'll see it pop up on, if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll see it pop up tomorrow. And then the usual thing, instant reaction right after the game and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's it for the show, you guys. Make sure you say something in the comment section. I'll reply to you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys. Love you guys. You love that.